So if you're coming from my unboxing video or full specification video, welcome back to the channel and thank you. So we have all our parts here in the RTF kit. We have our goggles, we have our drone here, and we have our radio. We also have some other accessories here like our antenna, our charger, a battery, and a battery bank. We also have an SD card, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. So we're just gonna start this process here from left to right. We're gonna start off with the goggles here. It's pretty straightforward. We have our box style goggles. And the first thing you'll do here is install your antennas. Just make sure before you power these on, you do install the antennas. Now this has a receiver in here. Technically, it shouldn't affect the whole system, but anytime a device is designed with an antenna, it is designed to operate with the antenna attached. We're just gonna remove these two plastic grommets or coverings from the antenna leads here, and we're just gonna screw this on here. 1, 2. Now, this is pretty cool because these antennas do fold. It makes it really convenient for packing, so you can leave these attached if you want to. You have a pretty compact design. And while we're here, we're just gonna remove this protective piece right here. This just protects the screen. Let's get familiar with some of these buttons here. On this side, you have your band, channel, and record button, and then you have your charger port right here. If you wanna hear your video, you can just put a headphone jack in here and hear it. On the other side, you have your automatic scan channel, your power button, and also your menu button. And below here, you have your SD card slot, and this has a built-in DVR, and that's why we have this SD card right here. This is a micro SD card. We're just gonna put it in here. There we go. So that's in here. So now we're just gonna power this on. Usually I'll be using this with the goggles, but since we have this nice design here, we can actually show you what we're looking at, which is really convenient. So we're just gonna power this on. Few seconds, and there you go. It says Emax on here, and then static snow. And the reason why it's showing static is because this drone here is not powered. Now, these two buttons here, the band and channel, as well as the automatic scan, will change your channels. I don't know if you can see this too well, but on the top left, it says channel and it says R4. So that's our band and channel, race band 4. Now, Emax has already bounded this straight to the drone, so that should be the right channel for our VTX. So that's that. This is all set up. Let's power this down to save some battery here. All right, so let's move on to the drone here. And the drone comes already pre-assembled from the factory. But what I want to stress here is that since you're flying this for the first time, and this is a good practice, you do a quick pre-flight on the drone. It's always safe and smart to do a quick pre-flight. This is required by Part 107, although you're not a Part 107 pilot, only because you could have a loose wire, a loose motor. You don't want to find out about that in flight, especially your VTX. So we're just going to look here, make sure our antennas are still attached to the VTX and the flight controller, as well as this wire here for our receiver. Look under here, make sure the propellers are on, they're not going to fly off. And we're just gonna install the battery here. So we have our Emax battery. This is a 1-cell battery, 450 milliamp hour. And you do wanna charge this before your first flight. There is some power on here, but it's not fully charged. The included charger here is pretty simple. You can only plug this in one way. Make sure you're choosing the HV function on here. And that gives you the proper voltage for charging, which is, I think, 4.38 on this one. Okay, so let's just install this battery in here. And you have these two straps right here, and you can mount it this way or this way, it really doesn't matter. I'm just gonna slide this in here, and you can see it's pretty easy. This rubber band is very flexible, and you just have to plug this in here. We're not gonna plug it in now, only because we have to do some other setups on here. Next thing to know here is your camera angle. For right now, we are gonna keep it straight forward. Obviously this is adjustable, so you can change the angle here. And if you want to fly faster, you do want to increase the tilt of the camera. But for right now, we're going to fly indoors, very slow, and having a lower camera angle is really important for that. Let's move on to the controller here, or the radio. If this is your first time flying a FPV drone, we'll talk about the controls here first. The first one here is your throttle. This increases or decreases the speed of your motors. Now you have this one here on the same side as well. This is your yaw, and this will pivot the drone in the vertical axis and just turn it so it pivots. That's yawing. And then on the other side here, you have your bank, and just like what it sounds like, it allows the drone to bank left or right. And then finally, you have your pitch, and that allows the drone to either pitch up or pitch down while moving forward or back. It just depends. Okay, so now that we're familiar with the controls here, we also have some trim buttons in the bottom. Usually we don't use trim for FPV. Usually if your flight controller is calibrated, then it will know what's the right orientation and then have level flight. Besides that, you want to get really familiar with these other switches. Each switch does a specific purpose. And unfortunately, this controller here, they're not labeled. Now, there is a point to say that, hey, if you're flying in the goggles, you really can't see the switches anyway. But initially, you do want to know what each one does. And if it's not labeled, you really don't know what they do. So we'll talk about them right now. So this is aux1, aux2, aux3, and aux4. Now, aux1 is usually reserved for arming or disarming the drone. To arm the drone, you move this all the way down. Now, arming is really important. It's one of the most important switches on a FPV drone or FPV controller. And all arming does, arming starts or stops the motors. On your traditional camera drone, you can go into your phone or your display and then start the drones. This is all manual. You're in control of everything, and if you get into a bad situation, if you crash the drone, if you get inverted or in a bad predicament, the motors will not stop. They will just continue to spin until they burn out or the battery runs out. So whenever you do get into a situation, you do want to know where to unarm or disarm the drone, and that's one of the most important switches on this drone. The next one here is your mode selector, and that changes the modes or the capabilities of your drone. Now there's 3 positions on here, therefore we have 3 modes. We have the first mode, which is angle mode, and pretty much what that does is keep the drone level, straight and level, and it will just stay there. And then if you move the controls, then the drone will move left, right, back, forward, up, or down. But once you release the sticks, it will get back to a level position. The next mode here is called the horizon mode. That's the center position right here. And it's very similar to angle mode, but it's a combination of angle and acro mode. And what that does is, if you release the sticks again, it returns back to level flight. But if you do deflect the sticks full left, full right, full up or down, the drone will continue to roll and continue to roll. And now you're inverted. It will continue to roll as long as you have the input in here. But if you get into predicament and you release the sticks, it will go back to a level horizon position. The last position here is acro, and once you've gained some confidence or some experience, then you can go into acro mode. And acro mode is full manual mode. There's no assistance, there's no return to level. Whatever you do, if you just move these sticks 1 inch or a centimeter, a millimeter, the drone will move and it will stay there in that position. It will not return back to level flight, up or down. It's just gonna stay where it's at. So you have to do everything. Okay, so your third switch here is your aux3, which enables crash flip mode or turtle mode. So the premise here is that if you do crash your drone, say you're flying, you're far away, you still have control and you still have video feed, you can hit this switch. It puts it into crash flip mode or turtle mode, because the turtle, when they're upside down, they can't really turn over by itself. And what that does is you can move the sticks left or right to turn this drone right side up. And the last one here is the beeper switch. And that's cool in case you do crash your drone or you've flown pretty far, then you want to find your drone. Although this is a very bright drone, it just helps to find your drone. It makes a noise, you will hear the beeper, and that will allow you to find your drone a lot faster. So yeah guys, this is a pretty nice controller, and as I said, I would highly recommend that you go on the sim and do some practicing before you go on your first actual flight. And you do have that port down here for that, so it can interface with your computer. All right guys, so this is pretty much set up. You have a good briefing of what to expect, what to do here. So let's go for a flight. I think we're gonna do a flight in here first. In typical fashion, we usually fly indoors first, and then after we've flown, we'll go outside and see how it performs outdoors. Alright guys, we're back from those 2 flights and that was simply amazing. Alright, so let's start from the beginning. As you saw, we started here in the room and it was pretty cool, guys. Took it off in angle mode out of here and it flew really great around the room. The first thing I noticed was that these controls here, the rates are very low, which is, you know, it's good for beginners. It's really good, meaning you don't overcorrect on the drone. So once you put a stick input in here, the drone doesn't just go immediately left or right. So it's very dull, very subdued, and that's really good for first-time pilots. So I got comfortable really easily, really fast, and I decided to go downstairs. And as you saw, I went downstairs and went down there. I'm at 25 milliwatts, hardly any breakup. We went downstairs, went through the sliding door outside. Sure enough, there's wind outside, but this thing performed pretty well. Now, a few things I noticed on that transition from indoors to outdoors was that the drone was affected by the wind. Obviously, it's a tiny whoop. These things are not made to fly in windy conditions. I would say anything over 5 miles an hour, then you will see some wobbles in there, and we did see that later in the flight when we went outdoors. The next thing I noticed was the camera. The camera worked really well indoors. We have pretty good lighting in the studio, but going downstairs, going through the hallway, and then transition from indoors to outdoors, the camera adjusted pretty aggressively, pretty good, and there wasn't any problems there. Anyways, as you can see, I turned around, tried to get back to the sliding doors, and obviously the inside of the house is a little bit darker than outside. But as soon as I got through that door as well, it transitioned again really quickly, you know, bumped up the exposure, and we got to see pretty well. So we got the drone up here, and since I was already flying on that one battery, we just kept flying. So did some laps in the studio here, and as you can see, it worked out pretty well. Since it was so comfortable, such a nice docile drone, tried to shoot some gaps under the chair, under my tripod, under my workbench. Yeah guys, I was just blown away to the point where I almost lost track of the battery life on the drone. So we went outdoors, took this thing out. We started off in angle mode and realized quickly we have so much space here. Time to go into air mode, went into air mode, and this thing flew so much more nimble. We had so much more control with this, but in air mode I had a lot more authority. The drone responded so much quicker and it was just a blast. We went to the kids play area, tried to shoot some gaps, and it worked pretty well, guys. Obviously sometimes going through some holes or going through some of the play stuff in the area, then the wind would get it due to some turbulence. Now, when we went outdoors, we did turn this up to around 200 milliwatts to see how well this VTX is going to perform. I also did route this antenna through the canopy here so that we can have better reception. So I think that's a good thing. It is going to block, but I think it was designed that way for that reason, because there's a small hole right in the top of that adjusting canopy for the camera. So I think it was designed for that. Anyways, this was the most challenging part of this whole experience flying this drone, was going through the house. There's a lot of material in there. We have like a dumpster outside, we have multiple walls, we have concrete, and we have wood. And as you can see, it worked pretty well. There's some breakup in there. Never once did I feel like, oh man, this is overwhelming, I gotta disarm. There was one instance where I turned towards the stairs and I figured I could go upstairs, but I figured that would be too challenging for it, especially if I crashed or if I lost VTX signal, then why am I gonna go into this house that's under construction? So decided not to do that. The story here of this drone is that this thing is made to shoot gaps. It's so tiny, it's so docile, it gives you the confidence to fly this thing and build your confidence, which is what you want as an FPV pilot. You want to build your confidence and be able to push it. Now this drone here is constructed pretty well, so even if you crash it, it's not going to do any damage. But yeah, I had a really good experience flying this thing outdoors, and even more fun actually flying it indoors. So yes, it is a 1S drone. You would say that a 1S drone is made and designed for indoor flying, and I would agree with that. But that doesn't mean that, you know, this can't fly outdoors. I did fly it outdoors, and it was okay. It was a good experience, guys. And doing some power loops and stuff, it worked pretty well. I did get some prop wash getting out of the loop. You did see some shimmy in there. And yeah, this thing isn't made or designed for acro maneuvers. It can do it, but it's not made for that. Just the nature of this design here. Now talking about this 1S battery, it did perform pretty well. Indoors, I got between 5.5 to 6 minutes. And my average battery life outdoors was between 4.5 to 5.5 minutes, which surprisingly isn't bad for a 1S drone, although it's light. I want to talk a little bit about the goggles here. I didn't have any issues with this goggles. I did take my glasses off because obviously I can't fly with the glasses on. And the only position that worked with my vision was the third notch. As far as these antennas, they work pretty well. Antennas are good. The power output on this drone, 200 milliwatts, and the reception from my antennas, it was adequate. And I can get pretty far. As you can see, usually I fly these drones around the same area. So I went around the basketball court and I got a little bit of breakup, but no big issue here. For the size of this drone, that was plenty distance to fly it. Now, as far as the image on here, the camera on this is really good. I was actually really impressed with the quality of it. The colors are good. As I said before, the dynamic range is good as well. Going from indoors to outdoors, the exposure adjusted pretty quickly. And it's very clear for a small camera drone, which is also analog. So the camera is amazing. As far as the image on here, it was pretty good as well. I noticed that the recording on the DVR has a little more interference, more static than what I was actually experiencing in the goggles. So the experience in the goggles is really good. What you see in the image on the computer or what I've shown you is a little bit more exaggerated with the interference. Having said that, one thing to know here with this goggles is really important to know. A lot of guys who fly FPV like to just put their drone down, hit record and go fly immediately. This thing doesn't record immediately. There's one interesting catch to it. If you hit the R button, you see the red light on here and you think it's recording. It's not recording. And you have also an LED light up here. I thought this was a light sensor. It's actually an LED to show whether your battery is charged or not and or if you're recording. So we're gonna hit the record button here and you can see the red dot here and the red light here. It takes almost 10 to 15 seconds before it starts to flash. And if you just start flying, you might actually miss your recording. And there it goes right there. So maybe 10 seconds, it's not immediate. The good thing though is when you hit the record button to stop, it does stop immediately. On that same note, this is really crucial. I noticed this as well when I was flying indoors and outdoors. As you can see here, it's probably hard to see, but this thing is sealed pretty well, which is good. You don't want any dust or anything getting in between your screen and your lens here. And because it's so sealed, so properly sealed, we have issues here with moving this diopters here. There. All right, so that's cool. So you're finished flying, you're ready to pack this up into your case or whatever. You have to compress this or, put it back into its normal position. As you do that, the pressure that's built up in here is gonna push the screen out. And if you're in a bad situation, this screen could drop to the floor. So here we go. Actually, it didn't do it. Okay, so it did push out a little bit, but it didn't fall off this time. So just be careful of that. This is a seal. We don't want you to damage your screen, that's all. That's why I'm saying that. But no issues on the goggles. The controller works pretty well. I have no issues with this. The only issue or gripe I have with this is just it's not labeled on here, but it works pretty well. Having said that, a lot of pilots have a preference to what their switch does. In my opinion, a lot of the guys have their arm switch down here. There's a very good chance I am gonna reassign these, these switches back to a switch setting that I like. Anyways, this thing worked pretty well. If you're new to the hobby looking for a kit, this is a good candidate. There's also some other manufacturers out there as well, so you can compare it. I've done a full specification video on this kit, so if you want to compare the specs on this to another drone, yeah, go at it. You can take a look at that video. I'll leave those links down below so you can make that comparison and make a smart purchasing decision. Besides that, guys, this is a go. If you can get it, I would highly recommend it. Also, guys, if you're an experienced pilot and you say, okay, I don't want to get all this stuff right here. I already have a goggles, I already have a radio. They sell this by itself, the TinyHawk 3. This is the third iteration of it. And yeah, you can get this. And honestly, guys, if I lived in a colder state or a colder climate, this would be a perfect drone to fly throughout the winter months. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think about this drone down below. If you have any questions or concerns about this drone, I'll be happy to answer those. While you're there, please consider subscribing to the channel, therefore you'll be notified whenever I do make a new video, because I will be making some more videos on this drone. I don't want to say what yet, but we will be making some more videos on this drone, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.